class, Mr. Rasmussen here. In this lesson, Lesson 10D, we're going to be talking about joints and connective tissue. Joints are amazing. Joints allow us to do lots of really incredible things. These two places where bones come together allow us to do all the really wonderful things that humans have become accustomed to doing. For instance, swimming. If we didn't have a ball and socket joint in our shoulder, swimming would be impossible. If we didn't have that same ball and socket joint in our shoulder, serving a great tennis ball would be, or having a great tennis serve would be almost an impossibility. And if we didn't have joints, we wouldn't be able to play basketball, or we wouldn't be able to play, in this case, wheelchair basketball. So joints are incredibly important to us as human beings. So it's great to have a good understanding of these joints and what it allows our skeletal system to do. We're going to talk about each of these joints separately. There's a whole bunch of different types of joints, and we'll take them each separately. Now, a joint, really simply, is any place where two bones come together. Any place where two bones meet, we have a joint. And the first type of joint we're going to look at is an immovable joint. And a great example of an immovable joint would be the skull here. So in our skull, we have these sutures here. So we have the two parietal bones and the occipital bone back here and the frontal bone up here. And where these joints, where these bones meet together, right here we have these things called sutures. And it's these places, and these joints here are immovable. They're not meant to move. These bones in your skull are not meant to shift around or to move or to adjust. They're meant to stay exactly where they are. That's an important function that they have. So this is a type of joint. This is an immovable joint. Okay? Another type of joint is a partially movable joint. I'm going to grab this back here. A great example of a partially movable joint is our spine. So our spine is not meant to have a great range of motion. It's not meant to move a lot, but it is meant to shift a little bit and to just flex a little bit. So these joints here, these spaces in between these vertebrae, these joints are what we call partially movable. They're not meant to have great ranges of motion, but they are meant to shift and move just a little bit. Okay? Another type of joint is a hinge. And a hinge is an important joint because it allows a lot of power. It's our strongest joint. An example of a hinge would be where this would be your humerus and your ulna, where they come together right here, this joint. This is a hinge joint. It allows a huge amount of power between these two bones. Now, it doesn't allow a lot of movement. You can't move this back anywhere, but you can lift a lot of weight, and there's a lot of force when these two bones are pulling on each other to close. So this is a hinge joint. It's the strongest joint, allows the most power of any joint. Another type of joint that we see very frequently is a ball and socket joint. And a ball and socket joint allows the greatest range of motion. So if we take here's a pelvis bone, and right here's a femur. This part here, this would be the ball, and right here in our pelvis bone is the socket. And where these bones come together, we have that ball and socket joint. Now, this is an incredible joint because it allows this huge range of motion. These two bones can have this giant range of motion within here, which allows us to really move our arms and our legs in really unique ways. So this joint is an important joint because it allows lots of motion, especially here in your shoulder or down in your hips. The bad news about this joint is it's not as strong. It can come, we can have dislocates where these two things move apart from each other. That happens a lot with these types of joints. You see a lot of shoulder dislocations and stuff like that. A gliding joint, this is one joint you may not be familiar with. It's kind of the weird one. It has a good range of motion, and it is a place where, we'll go back to gliding joint, it's a place where two bones come together. So an example would be right here, between your metacarpal of your thumb, right, and this carpal here. So where these two bones meet, there's a range of motion. This thumb bone can move in all sorts of different ways, but it's not pivoting, it's just gliding on top of this bone. So that's a gliding joint. A pivot joint is where two bones pivot together, right? Self-explanatory. A great example, or my favorite example, would be this one, the atlas and the axis. Where these two bones come together, they form a great pivot joint. So the atlas sits on top of the axis, and it allows this pivoting on top here. This is how your skull is able to move around. This is what gives us the motion in our head to be able to twist our head. It's this pivoting of the atlas on the axis. It's important. So those are the joints. Those are the joints I want you to know. I want you to be able to identify them. So if I give you a joint, you'd be able to tell me the type of joint. That's important. Those joints allow our body to do really incredible things and really give us power where we need power and give us motion where we need motion. We'll talk just a little short ending here on connective tissue, just so you know these terms. A tendon is a place where muscle connects to bone. So any place where muscle connects to bone is a tendon. And a great example of this would be the tendons in your hand. We see these a lot. Your hand is full of these long tendons that connect to your phalanges out here to the muscles located in your forearm. And that's what allows us to be able to contract and move our hand in really sorts of interesting ways. It's these tendons connecting these muscles to our bones out here that allow us our motion in our hand. A ligament is a place where two bones are connected. So it connects bone to bone. And a really important ligament that you hear a lot about is this one right here. And this is your knee, right? So we have our femur up top and our tibia on the bottom. And this is our knee joint. And this little ligament in here is called your anterior cruciate ligament, or an important name for it would be your ACL. You always hear about people tearing their ACL. Well, the ACL connects the femur to the tibia. It's an important ligament in holding your knee together. And if that knee gets bumped or bent the wrong way, that's a really easy ligament to tear or to damage. So that's your ACL, but ligaments connect bone to bone. And the last little thing I need you to know about is cartilage. And cartilage acts as a cushion between bones. So over here, this is our femur down here, and we can see our tibia at the bottom here. So here's our tibia and our femur up here. And we have this cartilage called femoral cartilage, and it sort of wraps around our femur here. And that's what allows these two bones to rub up against each other and not damage each other. So we're not rubbing bone on bone. There's still a nice cushion of cartilage. If that cartilage becomes damaged, you start to have a lot of joint pain. And so a lot of people do knee replacement surgeries at that time. But that's cartilage. Cartilage cushions bone between bone. So that's it for this lesson, and that's it for our bone chapter. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in class. Otherwise, yeah, we'll talk to you later. Have a good day.